Crimes without criminals, an invisible gang at work. Who are we gonna call?
Whoa!
Together we will punish these creatures. These turtles. Cowabunga.
Huh?
Cowabunga! Hey, what are you, some sort of punker?
Welcome back to another episode of Cinema Sleuths. I'm Luke Deckard.
And I'm Matthew Booth.
And this week, we have got a shell of a case, don't we, Matt?
We have got a shell of a case.
What are the details for this week's investigation?
This week, we're looking at 1990s Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, starring Judith Hoag, Elias Koteas, James Sato, Josh Pace, Robbie Rist, Corey Feldman, and Brian Tocci. Directed by Steve Barron, with a screenplay by Todd W. Langan and Bobby Herbeck, based on the comic book created by Kevin Eastman and Peter Laird. The IMDb logline is 4 Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles emerge from the shadows to protect New York City from a gang of criminal ninjas.
Well, we thought we would bring on a returning cinema sleuth. We have Julian DeBacker with us, podcaster, actor, YouTuber, collector of VHS, Laserdisc,
too much
many
to mention.
things. But Julian, I'm really glad to have you back for Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 1990.
I'm very happy to be here. Thanks for asking me back.
When we agreed, Matt and I agreed to do this episode, you were literally the first person that came to mind. I was like, of all the people, I was like, it's got to be Julian, because you have that, like, your nostalgia. Just anyone who follows you online, you are just so locked into that, like, 80s 90s nostalgia, and it is it's like that. It'd be perfect for this. So yeah,
I refuse to enter the 21st century.
You know what? You're probably making a good call.
You are making a good call.
Because after about 2010, it just really started to suck.
That's funny, because I think the most recent movie in my top 40 is actually from 2010. That's funny.
Well, there you go.
So let's go back to the wonder years of 1990. Ninja Turtles. I am so excited to talk about this film. I love this film. I love Ninja Turtles. So before we dive in, pre-game discussion, let's talk about everyone's sort of fandom with the Ninja Turtles. Julian, we'll start with you. Were you a fan at the time? What's your fan? To quote from Anthony Desiato, who does the Digging for Kryptonite podcast, he has his it's all about the fan journey. So what is your Ninja Turtles fan journey?
I have a very distinct memory of the very first time that I ever came across or saw anything TMNT related. So I think the cartoon series started in '87. So I was only 3 years old at the time, so I have no recollection of that. But I do know that my cousin, his godfather was from Canada. So although we're both Belgian guys, but my cousin had a Canadian godfather, and that godfather had access to, of course, American media and culture and toys as well. So my cousin got a Michelangelo action figure from his Canadian godfather, and that was in 1989, so when I was 5 years old. And I remember my cousin playing with the toy, and I found it super cool. I still have it, because in later years he got rid of his action figures and his toys. He grew up, and I didn't. So I still have his first Michelangelo. So that's in my collection, and he only collected like 2 or 3 figures and 1 or 2 vehicles. So he was a fan for like a year or maybe a year and a half. but I distinctly remember he was the very first kid on the block that had it in Belgium. So this was at least a full year before it came to our stores. I think in 1990, that's when Turtle-Mania came to Belgium or to the Netherlands, to whatever, the European continent. It took us at least a year or a year and a half before we saw more turtles on the shelves and on the television. So I think it was 89 for me, the first figure, but then 1990 before it was really a thing over here. And then, of course, it was the cartoon series. I remember the bubble gum. There was a very good bubble gum where you could collect the stickers that came with the bubble gum. I still have those as well. And then trading cards, of course. But I was 6 years old and I never got any turtle stuff for myself. So I was always jealous of my cousin. And it was only in later years when I had my own money, my own allowance. I think I was 10 years old, let's say 94, that I started to pick up some TMNT things. But by that time, it was already on the way out.
Yeah.
The franchise had run its course because even the third movie had come out and disappointed at the box office. So I remember that I had to make do with just what was left. So it was just a few toys. It was just a few things. There were no more magazine. It was just it died out at the middle 94, 95. So I really had to find my TMNT stuff on flea markets and secondhand hand-me-downs. And so I was never a first run turtle fan. It was always in the background growing up. But I always loved the franchise. I always loved it. I think there's something that speaks to an 8-year-old or a 9-year-old boy, and of course a girl. There's something just so cool about these four, teenage turtles doing their thing, and I don't know what it is. That's probably also stuff for an academic discussion or a discourse. What is it about the turtles that speaks to kids? I don't know what it is. They're just cool. I think I still have all my stuff, but there's even if you're interested in it, I have a YouTube video on my TMNT collection. But I always loved it. A soft spot for the four green dudes.
Yeah, man. Yeah. Yes, similar actually, in many ways. I mean, I was born in 1987, so by the time I was into the Ninja Turtles, I mean, my first kind of recollection is definitely the cartoons. That was on reruns, all the time. My parents didn't even know what it was at first. They said, you just started talking about like fighting turtles and the one with the purple mask, and we had no clue what you were talking about. And then we realized you were watching this cartoon. So I clearly found it on my own at some point and fell in love with it. And Donatello has always been my favorite since I was a kid.
Me too. Donatello.
Always loved Donnie. But no, similar to you, man. Like I don't recall getting like first-hand toys. I always remember getting second-hand Ninja Turtle toys, picking them up at flea markets, picking up the garage sales, stuff like that. I think I have a vague memory of owning the van. I have a vague memory of that, so I think that is real. I think that's real, or maybe it was a friend's. I'm not sure, because that was the thing. A friend of mine had a Mikey and a Donnie, and I got really jealous, and I would borrow them, and I would borrow them for like a week, and I would play with them like hell, and I would always hate having to give them back. But yeah, I ended up building my relatively, I would say, a small-ish, medium-sized-ish turtle collection through mostly second hands. The main turtle toys, but then the gold dust was finding the like Ninja Turtles movie action figures. Those were almost impossible to find by the time I was collecting, which we're talking definitely kind of 94, 5, 6. That was kind of my golden era for looking for turtle stuff. So it was, as you were saying, that's kind of when the craze was on the way out, taking a bit of a pause. But I ate this stuff up as a kid. I had all 3 films on VHS. I watched all of them quite a lot. Even as a kid, I was pretty critical of them. We'll get to that maybe a little bit later. But love the cartoons, loved most of the films, and wanted to be a Ninja Turtle. I had a stick that I would walk around and just beat the crap out of things with because I just wanted to be Donatello. So I was a diehard Turtles fan in the 90s for sure. But Matt, what about you? What's your Turtle fan journey?
Well, it came along at the wrong time for me, really. This sudden boom, because I was in 1987. I was 13. So for when this was really at its heyday, and it was, as Julian says, it was sort of arrived with a fanfare of sort of Turtle-Mania, and then it did seem to fizzle out fairly quickly, as these things often do. And I was between sort of 13 and 18 when this happened. So by that stage of my life, I was steeped in detective fiction and crime fiction. So this sort of passed me by. I think I came to the Ninja Turtles when I went to university, maybe sort of the mid-90s, when I had a sort of resurgence because in comic books interest, because the Nightfall Batman storyline was going. So I went into comic shops to get the collected editions of those, and then thought, oh yeah, I remember the Turtles from my late 80s. I also bought a couple of them and just read them, but I didn't collect any of it. And I was never a real sort of, Ninja Turtle fanboy. Because I think I was just wrong place, wrong time, really, for me. Really.
Well, I suppose it's fascinating because I think the cartoon is the thing that hooked a lot of kids, because the comic book was quite mature. Yeah. It wasn't really the book that was geared for it wasn't geared for children consumption. But the cartoon was it was 100% kid friendly. It was bubblegum the whole way through, and easy to get into. So I think that's probably a huge part of it, because what I have no clue on at this point in time is I don't know how quickly the comic book came over to the UK. It was a huge hit in the US, but I don't know what the rate of, how quickly did it come over here, or did it all start to come over here in 1990 when the film was coming over and sparking it that way? I guess, Julian, if you're saying that you didn't really start getting stuff till 1990, you're Europe at that time, that could be a big part of it. Maybe Turtle Frenzy didn't really kick in properly here until around that time, which meant even the books would have passed you by, Matt, at the time.
Yeah, well, yeah, I think so. And I do remember the cartoon, but it will have been, I would have seen it just because it was on, rather than actively tuning in, whereas a few years later, I was actively tuning into the Batman animated series. Yeah. It's just, like I say, it was just a sort of time. It just wasn't the right time. But I don't know when the comic came over here either, but I do remember in sort of mid-90s being able to get older copies, but they may have been imports.
I have to say it took me quite some years, but that could be my mistake or my fault. But it took me quite some years to realize that it was based on a comic book. I think that was at least the mid-90s, but that, of course, I could be because I was younger and I never read any comics as a really young kid. I think, in fact, comics, as in comic books, the American style comic books, the very thin books, those only became popular as well in Belgium around that time. We Belgian comics are always, they were much, it's comparable to French comics. They're very thick and quality cardboard. So I think because I collected some Turtles comics over the years. They were mainly, I think, for specialty shops, like dedicated comic book stores had them in Belgium, but never the mainstream shops. They just sold like Belgian comics and never imports or never English language stuff like Turtles or even Batman or Superman. I think I might have one translated. Yeah, I think I have one Turtles comics that's translated to Dutch. So they definitely they trickled down to the market. But I think our main point of entry was the cartoon series and the toys. So it was never the comics. I'm still not a connoisseur of the comics. They are actually geared towards a more mature audience, right? I mean, they were never kids. They were never kids comics. It's not like a Superman or a Batman that you could read at all ages.
No. They definitely weren't. They definitely weren't.
Yeah. Did they use like swear words, or I don't know, because I never read those original.
They don't use swear words, but it's very violent.
Violence.
It's black and white, but it's very violent. There is blood. There is, it's a very sort of, to look at the page, which I have holding here, like the page is kind of, I would almost describe them as mean. Like they kind of look mean, but it's also, but in an awesome way.
Okay.
So very violent, a lot of blood, a lot of violence. So I kind of get it, but it's interesting because I was the same. I didn't know that they were comics for the longest time. I had seen the names, Eastman and Laird slapped on film, slapped on cartoons, but I didn't realize that this started out as a comic. And I think even now there's still probably a huge percentage of Ninja Turtle fans who don't understand that. I mean, we all know that Spider-Man and Superman, that we all know that they originate in comic books, but the Turtle cartoon as a kid kind of dwarfed everything else. Yeah. And you just sort of thought, oh, well, this is the movie based off the cartoon as a kid, not realizing, oh, this is the cartoon based off the comics. This is the film based off the comics, not based off a cartoon. But it's interesting. But maybe that's actually a good kind of segue to start talking. We can talk about the inception of the Ninja Turtles, because I find Eastman and Laird's journey very, very fascinating, especially in the year of 2026, because these guys were indie publishers. They self-published this book, which at this moment in time, there is you talk about self-publishing 10 years ago, shit tons of stigma. People look down on you like, oh, you couldn't get a publisher, huh? But the thing is, like, the indie scenes, there's always, I love it when indie stuff breaks through and becomes mainstream. And the fact that these guys were able to do it in the 80s is quite something. But they basically wanted to be a parody of superhero comics, and they took a lot of inspiration from one of my favorite superheroes, Daredevil, of course. It's Daredevil gets hit with radioactive nonsense that heightens his senses. They get hit with the goo that transforms them. You have Splinter who trains them. Daredevil has Stick who trains him. Daredevil fights the hand. The Ninja Turtles fight the foot. So they're basically just kind of making fun and having fun with the genre. Ninja Turtles, there's Spider-Man, there's Batman, there's all these weird animal, links to comic books. They just were just having a lot of fun, just kind of taking these things and just being really silly with it. But the thing, when you read the books, like, they're also, and I think when we get to the film, they're also very serious about what they're doing. Like, they're doing it with that kind of sense of they're taking the material seriously versus just using it as a way to poke fun, which I think is one of the things that elevates the comic book and made it probably so impactful, because it just wasn't a goofy thing. But so they published their first issue in 1984. They started their comic book company called Mirage Studios in their home, off the back of a tax refund, and Eastman's uncle loaned him some money. They printed their first issue of Ninja Turtles, put it out, advertised it in Comics Buyer's Guide, and it got some attention from distributors, and suddenly 3,000 copies were sold in a few weeks, and they just kept climbing. And this is nuts, because 1984, issue 1 comes out, it explodes. These guys are rushing to fulfill these, these independent dudes are rushing to fulfill this stuff. Then Playmates comes around, like, hey, we want a toy line. And then an animated series is, put into the works. And then by 1989, there's a film in production. Like, what a whirlwind of 4 years.
I mean, it really is incredible, isn't it?
Yes.
It's very much the sort of, if you're an aspiring artist, writer, or whatever it is, it's a story to give you hope, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because
Yes.
this is what dreams are made of, this, in terms of
Yeah.
getting a property out there and it being a success.
Yeah. To me, it's nuts. Apparently, over $1 billion worth of turtle toys were sold between 1988 and 1992, and all of those toys, those $1 billion of toys, are the ones that we bought Julian secondhand.
Have you got something else?
Are you trying to tell me how to do my job?
So Julian, you've not read. Have you ever read the comics? I'm guessing no.
No, not the. I think I have one or two. I have I remember I have a one shot of Raphael. So I think they made a.
Yes.
I think they made a spin-off, right? So I have a Raphael comic. It's a really weird one because I think it's almost like false advertising because there's a very cool. The cover is Raphael coming down through a roof window, dropping down on enemies. But that only happens on the very final page of the issue. So it's like issue 1 of let's say 4 or 5, a run of 4 or 5, or an arc of 4 or 5. But in the whole first issue, you only get 1 page at the end of Raphael. So it's a whole setup of 20 pages without any turtle action. So I was quite disappointed. And I remember I bought it in a comic book store in Bruges. It still exists, by the way, the comic book store in Bruges. If you're ever in Bruges, you should visit. It's a great comic book store. But it was as it tends to be. It was sealed away in a baggie with cardboard. So of course you could not even read it in the store. So it was really a case of false advertising. But and I never found the follow-up issue. So I don't even know what's going on with the story. But anyway, so I read that one issue of Raphael, but I never read the original run, let's say the black and white comics of the 4 turtles. I never read those, apart from that one issue that I have in Dutch, but I don't remember that. I think that was based on the comics, or that was even based on the UK, because that's something we can touch upon as well. That was called Hero Turtles. So that was based on the UK version of the series. So there were no nunchucks for Michelangelo, and it was called Hero Turtles. So I think Belgium, of course, being geographically very close to the UK, I think that trickled down as well to our merchandise. Some of the merch I have is called Hero Turtles, and some of it is called Ninja Turtles. So I always know which of my merch is American and which of it is British or English.
Yeah, that's the Brits being typically.
It's weird actually. It's weird because I never. You guys can correct me on that, but I never think of, when I think of the UK, it's never a country that with a lot of censorship. I always think of America as more prone to censorship.
100%.
But then of course you had the 70s. You had the video nasties like like Clockwork Orange that was forbidden on VHS and Last House on the Left. So the UK had a weird vibe, a weird era of censorship that's not around anymore.
That's right. In the 80s that we had. It was like the age of the video nasty, so there was all sorts of cheap horror films that were totally banned, and
there are still some movies that have even Attack of the Clones had like a headbutt that was cut out of the UK version, and that was 2002, so that's still relatively recent. But the UK liked their censorship for a very short.
Given that, it's odd given that UK television will give you full frontal nudity after 9 o'clock.
Yeah. Or those awful.
They'll put naked women in your magazines.
I think a lot of it is confused thinking, because I suspect that they will have thought this was for kids. It's the old story, because it's a comic. It's for kids, without knowing that the original comic was definitely not.
Yes.
And so they will have said, well, it's the original source material is designed for children incorrectly, and it's a cartoon. So we've got to, we can't have them called ninjas. And it's all part. We were going through that phase in the UK of just not liking anything that was vaguely, disturbing or subversive or violent or anything. Even Miami Vice suffered it. There was a big uproar about Miami Vice being too violent.
Oh, really?
Yeah, but the BBC got really het up about Miami Vice being too violent for to be shown British audiences.
So
Which of course
weird.
it's not.
Yeah. I never thought of the word ninja as being like offensive or something that kids cannot cannot be. I don't know. There's nothing to me. There's nothing scary or wrong about the word ninja, but apparently to the UK censorship or the UK board, they said like we can't have the word ninja. We have to replace it with the word hero.
My assumption is that ninja implies fighting, and they're trying to avoid that connotation. But like as Matt was saying, like I think they just misunderstood the brief.
yeah. I think that's definitely it.
But no, it's interesting. This first film when they started to kind of take it to the big screen, there are a huge amount of elements that are lifted straight from the comic book. Particularly with the first film and a little bit with the second film, but things like their basic origins, the rooftop battle, the farmhouse, sort of Shredder's demise in a way, are all really taken from the opening. And the cartoon was so huge that even that began to sort of bleed into the production as well. So things like the collared bandanas, because initially they're just all the same color. You can't really determine who is who other than via their weapons. April O'Neil was a lab assistant to an evil scientist as well. That was in change in the cartoon. Became a reporter. That then carried over. And it's interesting that she's never gone back to being a scientist again. She's kind of always been stuck in that, not stuck, but she's always been interpreted in that reporter role, and that is strictly from the cartoon. So the film was this really interesting like collage of the comics and the animated series, and I think kind of blended the two so nicely so that if you were a kid watching the cartoons, you loved it. If you were an older kid or adult reading the comics, you would also love it. Is my impression. Matt, did you watch this film at the time when it came out, or did you see it later?
I saw it later. It would have been. I suspect I saw this at like a cinema club evening at university.
Yeah.
So it'll have been like only a couple of years later, 93, 94 maybe.
Okay. Yeah. Because I mean, for me, like for me, I was just only able to base off the cartoon and the very angry looking toys that we used to have, and I bought into it, loved all of it. But I think, the costumes, the turtle costumes are absolutely insane. They are insane. Jim Henson's Creature Shop. My God. To this day, I think that those turtles are the best looking from this particular film, not the sequels, this particular film. I think these versions of the Ninja Turtles are the best on-screen, like live action or cinema Ninja Turtles that we have ever had. And I like Mutant Mayhem. I think that's a cool design, but when I think of the Ninja Turtles in live action or on the big screen, nothing pops like these things do.
They get progressively worse over the course of the franchise. But the funny thing is, just a very small detour. I actually saw the first movie, so the one we're discussing right now. That was the last one I saw because the video library in my hometown, I think they lost the tape or it broke down, probably because a lot of kids rented it. So they only had the second one and the third one. So I started with the second one, and I never hated that one probably because of course nostalgia. I should see it again. It's been years, but I remember really liking it, even though it has like a mixed reception. And I even like the third one, but I do remember that the costumes in the third one are horrible. It's like dollar store throwaway. It's like you can see the excellence of Jim Henson in the first one, and then you see it getting worse as if someone tried to emulate Jim Henson, but without the style, without the budget, and without the know-how. In the first,
they rushed it with the second one is the problem.
Yeah,
they turned the second film out within a year, so that
even less. It's like 51 weeks after. It's not even a full year after the first one. But the second one, it's still, let's say, acceptable. But the first one is indeed a work of art. It's amazing how they how lifelike they are, how agile they are. How apparently it was like a nightmare for the 4 actors, the stunt guys, because it was super hot. They filmed it in the summer, and then they had like it was a full body cast in foam, and of course foam does not let you transpire. It's all full heat inside. So it must have been a nightmare. I think I even read Steve Barron saying, or was it Brian Henson? One of the guys said, like, we could not even make it today. The union would not even allow you, because it's more like it's torture for the actors. It's so hot. But yeah, just amazing work all around. Apparently, I read that it was like early computer programming. They could program the movements of the eyes and of the mouth. So it was sort of like Doc Brown using the DeLorean or steering the DeLorean. But they could like pre-program, let's say, eye movement and even mouth and teeth and pupils. I think even thumbs. It's an insane amount of work that went into these costumes. And I don't know if that's a rumor or if that's a fact, but apparently Jim Henson, who passed away sadly only like 3 months after the premiere, but Jim Henson, he did not like the violence in a supposedly kids movie, and that's why Jim Henson, or at least let's say his estate, they declined to work on the second movie because Jim Henson was put off by the violence.
So Jim Henson's Creature Shop, they were in fact used for Ninja Turtles 2. I don't know if they were used for 3, but they were used for 2. But yeah, there was backlash because of the violence, because again, no one got the brief that essentially what was happening with the script was a faithful adaptation of the books, and not the happy-go-lucky cheesy cornballs that are the cartoon versions. So a lot of the violence was stripped back, because like they had the weapons in the cartoons, but they didn't really use them to fight. And then they had the weapons in the movie and didn't use them really in the second film at all, because they had to kind of dial back the violence. But Ninja Turtles this thing was coming off the back of things like the first Batman movie, which was dark and gritty and a mature take on that character for that time, kind of repositioning what Batman could be and be on the big screen. And Turtles is just like, yeah, we're gonna do the same. We're gonna make a faithful adaptation of what this book is. Not it's not the cheesy cartoon. It's this sort of gritty, grimy, wet streets, violence, corrupt worlds. And they really lent into that. And I think the whole kind of visual aesthetic of this movie, I've always loved it. It sort of imprinted on me what I thought cities were all like, and that is dingy and dark and dirty and crime ridden, and no matter where you go, you're probably going to get mugged, or you're probably going to get stabbed, and so the way that the film, I think, blends these fantastical creatures into a very real world looking film, because this film does what Superman 78 is essentially trying to do, and that is we're going to have this super element in our real world, and this does the same thing in a way that am I going to be like a heretic here and say that did they do it a little bit better than Superman 78? Because Superman 78 is cheesy, like uber cheesy and spots. Like the White House scene is stupid in Superman 2.
Yeah.
Lois Lane does some really dumb stuff. Gene Hackman's Lex Luthor is so goofy that it's hard to take him as serious as a villain and like marry it when Clark is just in the world doing things, I'm like, yeah, I kind of buy it. But when you get to these other elements, once Otis turns up, the film, like the first Superman film, just begins to, I turn off a little bit from it. Whereas this film, the visual style of the Turtles fits that world. They look great. They have this nasty sewer ridden, everything's a little bit dirty and grimy to them, but the whole world is dirty and grimy. So it blends so nicely. Even the Shredder and the Foot Clan, the way everything is done just is so wonderfully late 80s, early 90s aesthetic that just it's a really good visually. This film, I think, is a masterpiece on that side.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. And I think I agree with what you say about Superman in the sense that I think the best marriage of the fantasy and the grounded realism in Superman 78 is that first night after he's done the helicopter.
Mm-hmm.
And he's just catching thieves, and dropping them off at police stations. And I agree that the more comic booky it gets as it goes on, the less that blend works. I sort of agree with that. And this was off the heels of Batman 89.
Yeah.
But watching it for this episode again, what struck me a lot about the reality of this version of New York, where it's got these 4 turtles battling crime, which is a ludicrous thing when you say it out loud. It made Tim Burton's Gotham look totally fake.
You did.
For all its gritty, for all its grittiness and for all its darkness and gothic and all the rest of it that Batman 89 is, this is what the Ninja Turtles New York is what that Gotham City should have been. And once I'd thought of it, I couldn't. Every time there was like a sequence, I thought, this is what Batman 89 should have looked like, or at least closer to this than we actually got, because it really looks like painted sets and fake architecture in retrospect. So I agree. I think all this, the marriage between the fantasy and the reality in this I think it is the best comic book movie for that. That's been achieved up until this point. So, I mean, I suppose you could say Spider-Man does it, but
there's a similar aesthetic, definitely, between Ninja Turtles and then Sam Raimi's Spider-Man.
Raimi's Spider-Man, yeah.
I can see that. Yeah, I can see
and
that.
Just to add my 2 pence on the suits, and the Turtles themselves, they look brilliant, they look so convincing. And, I was totally invested in all 4 of them.
Oh yeah,
because they are so well presented. They, apart from the change in the mask from the comic, as you say, Luke, but once you've accepted that, they are so faithful to the sort of concept, the original concept. Each with a personality, each with a different sort of set of skills, and all the rest of it that come together as a team. The wisecracks are great. Everything about this presentation is superb to me.
Yeah, I think you could quite easily have not done the colored bandanas, and they all were visually their faces were all distinct enough, their voices were all distinct enough, and their personalities were all distinct, plus their weapons, that you still would have been able to tell them apart, even if they all had red masks. Like, you would have known which is which and who is who, I think, with this, just because they put so much effort. And watching this, every time I watch this, I never think I'm seeing a guy in a suit, despite the fact that there is a scene where Donatello laughs and his mouth opens so wide that you can literally see the guy in the suit. Like, even though that's in the movie, at no point do I ever think, oh, I'm watching guys in suits. I watch this every time and I think I am looking at the Ninja Turtles.
Yeah.
I don't feel that way entirely with the second one, and I don't feel it at all with the third one. Like, at all, especially, not gonna talk about, we'll leave the third one alone. But yeah, I don't feel it at all when we get to that that point in the franchise. But
the movements that they're able to do, the agility, when you compare it with, I love Michael Keaton's Batman, don't get me wrong, but when you compare it with that sort of shoulder turn he has to do because he can't move his head, and in fight sequences it's a bit awkward. This is just as slick as they come. Much more. I think they were much better costumes, if that's the right word, than they give them credit for almost. I think There's just something really nice about them and really, really sort of impressive.
I think in the way that Superman is tagline is "You'll believe a man can fly." This should have been "You'll believe there's a real motherfucking Ninja Turtles."
Yeah, yeah, you'll believe a turtle can be a ninja. Yeah, sure.
They just look real. Like I love that bit when the guy's like when Raphael rolls over the cab.
What the heck was that?
Looked like sort of a big turtle in a trench coat.
You're gonna LaGuardia, right?
You know, like you buy it. You're just like, huh, that's weird.
I was expecting Raphael to say, "Hey, I'm walking here," but they never went there. That seemed like a perfect setup because they do a Rocky Balboa thing and they do a James Cagney thing, but they don't do the what is it? I forgot Midnight Cowboy. Midnight Cowboy. Yeah, could have been, but they don't.
The other thing is, I can believe the teenagers. They act like teenagers.
Yes.
You know, which it sounds like a crass point, but it's quite important, I think, because that is what they are. You know.
Yeah, I want to get to that, but I want to just cap off one more thing that I found really interesting on the production side of this is that everyone turned this movie down for distribution.
Yeah.
Disney, nah. Fox, nah. Universal, nah. Orion, who did RoboCop, like this is a perfect Orion movie. What are you doing, Orion? What are you doing? Like you missed out on this one. But they're like, nah, and it all came down to they didn't want a box office disappointment like Masters of the Universe. And at the time of recording, that film has just come out, and all of the articles are saying this film is teed up to be a box office flop. It's interesting that at the time of recording, another Masters of the Universe movie is coming out, and this was the reason that all of these big studios were saying no to Ninja Turtles. So then New Line, God bless New Line, you know, brought us great films like Lord of the Rings. They picked it up and ran away to the bank with this one.
Much more than just a series of small, isolated incidents, it's now apparent that an organized criminal element is at work. And at the moment, business is good. So good, in fact, that there appear to be no eyewitnesses to any of these crimes.
The opening, I love the opening. It really sets up New York City in a very great and grimy way. And like I said, this really colored my worldview of what cities were like. That and RoboCop, which was the previous episode that we just released, like these two films colored my perception of big city life, of just being dirty and violent. And you're gonna go to a city, you're gonna get murdered. That was just my interpretation based on these two films. But you know, I think what's so cool about the opening shots, while April O'Neil is doing her newscast, and we're seeing the city, we're seeing these clips of the Foot like stealing whatever TVs and things, and some of it is a little bit silly, but it really, in terms of like placing you in this world, it really sets up that blend that we were talking of. Like, this is a grimy kind of a grimy, gritty street crime drama with this fantastical element of like ninjas robbing people, but then it does a really smart thing of, you know, being like, oh, you know, these all, you know, talking about, you know, boys are missing, all that kind of stuff. And as we're watching the items get stolen, and we're seeing glimpses of the Foot Clan, but most of the thieves are just you kind of average youths. And then it really sells you as to kind of how this organization is growing and why there's this big concern. And there's an interesting socio-political aspect to this, and what the Foot Clan are doing, what Shredder has done. And as we're following the wayward youths along the way, we then end up going to this big giant warehouse where there's all this fun, all these games, all this stuff. Shredder is manipulating young men. He's basically like a Joe Rogan. You know what I mean? Like it's a really interesting sort of, I think, analogy, particularly to you know, what's relevant quite, you know, today, of the desperation of community, the desperation for, you know, feeling a part of something, and how that attracts young men, boys, youths. to that. And you could look at the opening and just kind of breeze past it, but there's something really interesting about what they've set up with that opening, particularly with with the character of Danny, who we sort of follow as the connection between all of those people who are in that club, and his sort of extraction from that. But I don't know, I found that quite an interesting sort of opening to this film.
You're absolutely right. The sense of community. At one point, one of the folk does say, we're a family. And that's what Shredder has fostered. Use the word intentionally, because that's how gangs are formed, as I understand. Sort of disenchanted. There's nothing for this city to offer you, nothing for this world for you to go. But come and join us, and you'll be somebody. I think it's almost Dickensian. It's almost like Fagin's gang.
It's very Dickensian.
That's the sort of analogy that I agree, that he's ostensibly looking after him, but really what he's doing is getting him to do his dirty work, and commit crimes for him. I think there's something definitely Fagin-like about Shredder in this setup.
I agree.
Yeah, he's preying on these, let's say, kids or teenagers that are struggling with themselves emotionally, but also they seem to have like distant or aloof parents, so they're easily manipulated. And then he promises them something like, I don't know, some sort of power, but also some sort of responsibility by join the gang, and you can be somebody, you can be important, you can do whatever you want, indulge in your fantasies, a bit Pinocchio-like, a bit fantasy, Pleasure Island. That's what I was looking for. So yeah, he's promising them some sort of relevance and importance by indulging in whatever they want and making them feel important. So yeah, it's definitely Dickensian in that point, or in that way.
Yeah. I think so. It's so like, again, like I can imagine parents taking their kids to see this and being like, "What? This isn't the cartoon. Where's the Teenage Mutant Ninja? Where's the happiness? Oh no!" I can see it being a little bit jarring for anyone who isn't at the time, who wasn't aware of the comics.
But didn't they market it with the tagline, "Yo, dude, this is not a cartoon," something like that?
I think so. Yes. Yeah. I think they did,
that's fairly accurate marketing, actually.
It is exactly. It is exactly accurate. No, I agree. It's interesting because in this film kind of gets the backlash that Batman Returns gets. Batman Returns gets the flack for being really dark, really over the top. And then, this kind of has that. So it is sort of struggling, it does struggle. The franchise does struggle after this one, but I'm glad that they were able to, give us such a quite true to form, adaptation. But let's talk about April O'Neil generally. Judith Hoag. Is it Hoag?
I think it's Hoag.
Okay.
Yeah. I think
Judith Hoag. Judith Hoag is my favorite April O'Neil. Of all the April O'Neils that we've got, she is by far my favorite. And I think the film gets her just so right. Like she's far better than what she is in the cartoon. And the other subsequent Aprils just don't quite have the charisma that I think Judith has. Like she's tough, she's feisty, she's funny, she's sexy. Like she is like perfect. I have a bit of a crush on her. I love that bit. Like after the opening, she gets attacked outside of the station, and then Charles, her boss, is over at her house, which always was a bit like, what are you doing at her flat? Are you meant to be like romantically involved? Like, I don't understand what you're doing, because you're there while she's putting makeup. It was a little bit, I've never understood why he's there, but whatever. But I love the bit when he's like, "You're going to be escorted to that ancient van every night, April." And she's like, "Yes, sir." Like, she's very, very, of course, Lois Lane. Like, she's got that perfect Lois Lane feist that, like, my God, sorry to be dogging on Superman a little bit, but I wish we had this level of a Lois Lane in any Superman film. We haven't had. The closest, my favorite Lois Lane slight aside is Erica Durance in Smallville. She's the one who comes the closest to what Judith Hoag is doing in this. That I'm like, that's the perfect Lois Lane. And again, I mentioned this because Turtles is it's all a commentary, it's all a spoof, it's all a parody on comics in general. So yeah, what she's doing is great. I've always laughed at that line in the subway because she's the foot follow her down into the subway later on in the movie.
What? Am I behind on my Sony payments again?
And she's like, what? Am I behind on my Sony payments again? Like, that is a perfect, like, Lois Lane-esque kind of, joke to crack. But again, she's fucking awesome because she doesn't like shy away. She doesn't cower. She grabs her bag and she starts beating the foot.
She's not a damsel in distress, I don't think. At no point is she a damsel in distress.
Mm-mm.
She needs the Turtles to come and save her at times when anybody would need saving. You know what I mean? Up until that point, she's willing and able to deal with it herself.
Judith Hoag or Hoagie or Haig or whatever. She's a really good April. But I just wish I could compare it to the second actress. Do you guys remember? Was she good in?
I do. She's fine.
But she's just not as good. She's not as good. Or
yeah, I think the general problem moving forward with the film with this particular trilogy of films is that they just get worse across the board.
Yeah,
suits start looking worse. Production is a little bit meh. The writing is really quite terrible, nonsensical, ludicrous. So it's almost kind of, it's not the second April O'Neil, whose name is escaped me at the moment. It's not it's not that she's bad, because I don't think anyone is the returning actors are all fine. They're doing what they can with the role, with what's on the page. It's just that she doesn't have. There's nothing on the page that allows her to pop. Whereas I think this first film gave April so many things to pop. But at the same time, I think even in a bad film, a good actor can make something out of it and make something pop. And there's no whimsy, there's no sharp shooting comments or cuts or anything like that from April moving forward. Like all of the strong April-ness is solely this movie, and the rest of the time she's just sort of there and doesn't really do anything. So that's it's a mixture of bad writing, actor not having much to do, but also maybe in a different world, if she had a different script, it could have been better. But it's, for what we have, it's for me is quite forgettable. And I think maybe like you, Julian, I watched Turtles 2 a lot as a kid. I don't know what it was, but I watched Turtles 2 a lot. And then as I grew up, I started to just not watch it as much and go to this one all the time. And now if I watch a Turtles movie, it's 1990, because it has all the stuff that I like from all of the characters versus I don't care about Vanilla Ice. I just whereas the first one I put in because I'm genuinely going to be entertained in a serious but fun way.
What Russian novel embracing more than 500 characters is set in the Napoleonic Wars?
War and Peace.
He's alive!
Hey,
Thanks, Spaz. Splinter's alive!
We know, Leo. Of course he is. We all think he's alive.
I don't think. I know.
Huh?
So the Turtles themselves, and we sort of talked about them kind of generally. Again, like I said, I think the combination of the animatronics, physical actors, and the voice is it's an incredible combined performance that I genuinely am not ashamed to say that I feel that they are all four an iconic performances, because this is in like a 1989 scenario, this is so progressive and so ahead of its time that it's kind of like a prerequisite to Gollum, which I know is going to sound a little bit insane, but when you think about what Andy Serkis brought to making Gollum come to life with the motion capture, and then you think of all the components that had to go into making these turtles work live in the scene on camera while you're burning film, it's really fucking impressive to me. And sort of Matt, as you were saying earlier, kind of about the youthful side, I think you really do get a really good sense of how youthful they are, how teenage they are. Like when they come back having fought the foot for the first time, like, and we kicked, and then Leo's like, oh, and he has to compose himself because he's just so excited because they fucking kicked ass. But and he's like, oh, sorry, we fought well.
Yeah. There's that. The fact that their whole motivation for helping April is that they fancy it. There's that as well.
Yeah.
And just the choice of pizza.
Yes, no anchovies, dude. And I mean no anchovies. I literally used to say that when we would order pizza. I'd be like, can I order? Can I say the no anchovies thing? And then my parents were like, all right. They'd give me the phone. I'd be like, no anchovies, dude. And I mean no anchovies.
Did they ever get the reference, or no?
Not that I remember.
No, probably not.
But did you ever visit like New York City growing up, or living in the States?
Not New York, but like I remember going to Washington D.C. around 1998-ish, I think.
Okay.
Okay. So in the front of my mind was Godzilla 1998, because as you're going down the big tunnels and into the underground system there, I remember thinking like, oh my God, Godzilla could totally fit down here.
Yeah. So you never saw the New York City of the Turtles in the 90s. You never saw that.
No, never. That would have been cool.
That would have been cool, because of course, well, let's say if you visited New York in at the end of the 90s, that was already a totally different New York than from the beginning of the 90s, because let's say the end of the 80s, beginning of the 90s, it was still the crime-ridden New York City, and at the end of the 90s, the whole city cleaned up, and it was much more safer and vibrant and alive. So
yeah,
I think the Turtles is probably one of the last movies that really captures the gritty vibe, the Warriors-esque vibe of the Taxi Driver vibe.
Yes.
Even though I think it was already on the way out by 1990, it wasn't the Warriors NYC anymore, but of course they did with the subplot of the kids stealing stuff and the crime. They still make a good case of New York City not being the most pleasant place to be at the time.
Yeah. No, I think so. But yeah, no, I never got to visit that version of New York, but that would have been something. Something I found kind of interesting about on this particular watch is I was sort of reminded that Raph is sort of the heart of the story in this. It starts with him losing his sign. He's very, very frustrated. And I love the power of three, the three dams, the escalation of the dam. Damn. Like I love it. But you really get that him and Danny, Charles' son, April's boss's son, like they are sort of two sides of the same coin. They're both angry young men and struggling to find their way in the world, where they belong, where do they fit amongst who their family or friends or whatever. And you kind of, again, it's a really quite moving scene, I think, after Raph has gone to the cinema and he's fought Casey Jones and he's lost his sign. He tells, he comes back and Splinter's there, and they begin to talk, and like he's literally crying. Like, Raph is teary-eyed, and there's tears running down his face. And it's so easy to kind of overlook this film or this franchise as just sort of silly, goofy fun, violent ninja fun. When actually there I think there is a really interesting kind of commentary going on throughout this, and the way Splinter is that fatherly figure and is sort of helping his angry son through his anger to to kind of emerge a more whole person, and embrace him. I found that stuff quite moving. And I think again, if you take it forward again for like when Raph gets the shit beat out of him and they think he might die, they're on the farmhouse, like, and they really band together as brothers. And you have the fight. There is a real sort of Raph is like the emotional core of this, but there is a really fascinating just emotional journey for the Turtles as brothers, I think.
Yeah, I'd agree with that, and there are two bits that sort of stem from that for me, and that is Splinter is trying to say, calm his angry son, surrogate son, and he does the same with Danny later on when he says, a father will be proud of his son in order to get Danny back on the right track and stuff like that. That sort of reinforces the two sides of the same coin point, and I agree that he's the heart of it. Rough, and there's just I found it sort of almost stupidly emotional when April's putting water on his shell, to sort of care for him. And the reason for that is that, again, go back to what I said before, that I invest in these four turtles because the script has taken the time, the film has taken the time to give them personalities, and for me to get to know them. In an hour and 30 minutes script, there's enough time devoted to making me care about these, what should be four totally fantastical characters, but in a vaguely ridiculous in a way. But you never treat them as such because they are personalities that you've come to be attached to, and I think that's a massive testament to this film and the writing of this film and the performances of this film. Because, like you say, there's a lot of people behind each one of these turtles, and the work that's put into making them seem real is all paid off because it works. Everything they're going for works.
I think when they talk about movie magic, this film is movie magic. This is it
for
me.
In a way that I know I dog on CGI a lot, but in a way that you don't really get with CGI because these are three-dimensional beings on film. You can tell they are. These aren't four cartoons that is like a head on a stick sort of thing. That the actor's acting against. These are there, and they are tangible. All the more, both emotionally and physically. And I think it's a superb bit of work.
Yeah, I agree. It wouldn't work as well with we saw it with the Michael Bay produced movies. I didn't hate them, by the way. I found they were perfectly enjoyable. They were, but yeah, forgettable. But yeah, these are so alive, so vibrant. You see them being part of the scenery of every scene. It's they're just there. They are real tangible characters, of course, because they are played by real actors on set, and they are voiced by real actors in a booth. So I would love to see, by the way, like some sort of rushes. Like I imagine, I can imagine, like I think the body actors probably also said some dialogue on set, like Dave Prowse as Darth Vader.
Yes, probably.
I would with a horrible accent, perhaps. But I would actually love to see some of those original some of those original takes without the voice actors, because I think those stunt guys they did a phenomenal job. They are really not to be underestimated. It's I think it's a lot harder than we think it is. It's not just acting goofy and being there. It's really they gave them all. They really gave a robust, solid performance. All four of them. So It's really quite an amazing achievement.
I think so. I also really like the just like kind of going back to like the characters of all four turtles. I also think Leo has a really cool journey as well throughout this. He's another one that really stands out. Him and Raph, I think, have the biggest kind of character journey throughout the whole piece because Leo is kind of coming into this role as a leader, and he's trying to keep everyone together. And of course, when Splinter is kidnapped. And like that bit, my God, when they come back and they find Splinter gone, and then they go to April, and she opens the door, and they're all standing there, and she's like, "What's going on?" She's like, "Splinter," and you're just like, oh man, like that is a really good like quiet moment of the whole performance coming together. The voice actor, the animatronics, the body language of the people in the suits, and I that sort of. Leo going through on that kind of quest to that kind of hero's journey into adulthood in a way, but I feel like by the time you get to the end of the film, they don't really feel like teenagers anymore. They do feel like they have grown up a bit, which I think is a good kind of development for all of them. And then they sort of go back to doing the same shit in all the other films. But like, particularly the farm scene, the farm bit is a really good, first Leo's, they're all kind of happy and having defeated the Foot, and they have some good romps, and they fight around and joke around and stuff like that. But like I said, once Splinter is kidnapped, it forces everybody to grow up because Splinter's kidnapped, then Raph is on his deathbed. And then they have to escape the city, which, I mean, that fight in April's apartment and the antique shop is fucking amazing. I love that shot. I love that everything's on fire. Like the fact that everything's on fire, they're fighting for their lives, and April's boss is calling to fire her.
Yeah.
Like that is just wonderful. The layers of everything that's happening is just like it's impressive screenwriting, impressive, filmmaking. I love that stuff. But then kind of back to Leo, like his sort of, his when he's out there with the fire and he learns to commune with Splinter, and then no, Splinter's alive. Yeah, we all think he's alive. No, he's fucking alive. And then has to band his brothers together to kind of get to that bit like that. I remember that scene being sort of controversial in my house as a kid, like because I came from a very conservative Christian family, so it was like seancey, and my parents were a little bit like, "Oh, I don't know about this." But I always loved it. I always loved the blue fire scene. It's a little bit Star Wars, it's a little bit Obi-Wan Kenobi, Ghost Kenobi, Ghost Yoda. But what it symbolizes is that sort of achieving a higher plane of existence and growing up. I just think is a really cool thing. And then when the Turtles then have to kind of face off against Shredder, like all of that growth and experience like pays off phenomenally in that moment. Like again, that wonderful combination of the voice, physical, animatronic, like you feel the tension, you see the tension on their face, and it's so visceral. Leo and Raph, I'm always very impressed by their character journeys throughout this piece. I don't know if anyone stands out for you guys, but those are the two that really stand out for me.
Absolutely, I agree. I love the, how would you say it in English? Is it like an astral projection, something like that? Splinter giving his final lesson, sort of it really. At that point, imagine if you're like if you're a 10-year-old kid, there is a genuine threat that Splinter might not make it. Yeah. So at that point, you think, well, if this is it, if this is like if this is the swan song for the character, it's lovely that he gets to give one final lesson to his sons, and then he even closes off with, does he say like, "I'm proud of you guys" or "I love you guys"? It's really quite touching, actually. You don't expect. It's almost a cliche of an action movie having a sort of a quiet drama scene, but it works. It works within the movie, and it works as a sort of cathartic moment for the four teenagers, but also for the sensei, for the master, the pupil versus the master. It's really a beautiful scene, and of course it's very nice that we all know that Splinter does survive and he's still around. But when things are low, when it seems like he might not make it, it's a very effective scene.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah.
This is the sort of Ninja Turtle equivalent of the scene that you always have in a Rocky film, where he doesn't think he can win the final fight, and somebody, whether it's Mickey, Adrian, or a priest, has to say to him, "You can, Rock. Rally yourself." And then he eventually does. It's the equivalent of that. And you could argue that it's a bit silly, with it being a bit too sort of, psychic or fantasy or whatever. But this is a fantasy film, and my feeling is that this is the rest of it is so good that even if you thought this was a bit of a cop out or a bit of an easy solution, then you're pretty sort of, unkind, because the rest of it has earned so much that I think you can forgive it one little bit of sort of, plot advancement to get them back where they need to be. If that's how you choose to view this. I don't personally. I think this is a great emotional moment where, that they're able to sort of, like you say, Luke, go onto a higher plane, and it is the coming of age moment. It's the moment when they realise what they've got to do, and they band together to do it. And it's rousing to me rather than, sort of cheap.
Definitely, which sort of brings us, I think, to Shredder. Definitely got to spend some time on Shredder. James Sato, iconic all around. Like, this is another one where, like, his outfit is amazing. He looks so much cooler than what he does in the cartoon. He's so much more menacing. And again, it's one of those things, like, I can imagine being a parent with your, like, 8-year-old kid being like, what the fuck have I done? Oh shit. It's really mean. Because like his opening intro is, I love it. That long walk, that long shadow, that just brilliantly, it's that tall shadow that hits that point in the wall where there's like this like kind of that line shadow, right? Almost like a shadow wall. And he walks up to his shadow's it's super long, gets smaller until he walks across that line, and then that shadow is gone. It's really spooky, but like it's visually, it's so cool. It's so cool. And then when he just comes in and stands there in that room, and all these people are just, all of these nut jobs are silent, waiting on his, on his words, and they kind of fold his cape over his, spiked shoulder pads and all that kind of stuff. And then when he begins his diatribe, you're just like, man, you are a captivating dictator. Like, I get it. You are promising, as we said, you're promising so much to these wayward souls, and you are not, as Shredder will say, this is not a real family. But he is selling it to these people who are so lost. But I find him truly menacing. I find his performance scary. That bit when he takes the mask off on the roof, and you see the scars from Splinters, who'd scarred him as a young rat. And you kind of like, man, this guy is sort of obsessed. He's a little bit of a lunatic. But they really mined a lot from the comic books with this origin, rather than going with the Ninja Turtle cartoon origin here, which I think is definitely for the better. As a kid, I remember thinking, oh no, Splinter he's not a real rat. He's, but then, later on you learn that actually, yes, in the comics, he is literally this guy's rat.
A pet of my master Yoshi, mimicking his movements from my cage and learning the mysterious art of ninjutsu. For Yoshi was one of Japan's finest shadow warriors. His only rival was a man named Urokusaki.
Again, when you realize that the comic books are just intentionally being absurd. You're like, yeah, actually, no, I buy it. I'm cool with it. It makes sense. It's all ludicrous. Guy gets bit by a spider and he gets spider powers. Fine. You know what
exactly.
I mean? It's fine. But also this sort of haunting element that Shredder is haunted by the fighting styles of the Turtles because they remind him of Splinter's master, which then reminds him of the great love that he lost because these two men loved the same woman and murdered her and all that kind of stuff. So it's kind of like it's some of it is a little bit cliched, some of it's a little bit soap opera-y, but again, the movie just isn't ashamed to embrace what it is, and therefore all of this stuff that could have been a little bit cheesy, I think plays off entirely authentic. And I buy into Shredder's, why he's so suddenly determined to destroy the turtles, why he's curious about who they are because of what it reminds him of. Because even Shredder's right hand guy's like, they haven't been around for ages. Why are you worried about this? No, I want to defeat the turtles. It's like, all right, I buy into it. I buy into it quite a bit. But I think James Sato is what he does with Shredder is just a fantastic performance. One half is the physical performance, one half is the voiceover performance, and that I love that fighting scene. I love the fighting scene on top of the roof because there's so much energy and so much angst, and he's so terrifying that you the way he like takes out the turtles, you're like, oh my god, are they going to defeat him? Like, he is so good at what he does. Like, he is a force to be reckoned with. And Sato himself isn't like a big dude, but when you see him fight and how fast he is, like, you're just like, man, oh, you're scary.
Yeah, he looks big in that costume, though, doesn't he? He looks genuinely imposing.
Yeah.
And very often villains in comic book movies or in thrillers, they're set up as being absolutely terrifying, but somehow at the same time very easy to beat. You know what I mean? It's like when you get like the German army in the propaganda films of the 40s, cheap B movie thrillers. They're simultaneously set up as being the most evil force in the world, but then in order to laugh at them because it's propaganda, they trip up the steps going to the door. You think, well, you can't have it both ways, which, you know what I mean? Whereas with Shredder, it's absolutely, when he appears on that roof, you think, my God, they might not actually get out of this, and the only thing that's telling you they will is that there's only 10 minutes left and it's a Hollywood movie and the hero's going to win. And that's not really a fair thing to say, because in the actual moment, you do sort of think, are they gonna? What's the outcome of this going to be?
Yeah.
If they're going to win, at what cost will it be? I think that's really what I'm getting at, because he looks terrifying, like you're saying, totally threatening, and seems to have the upper hand for most of it.
Yes.
But I also buy into his motivation. I think it's perfectly sort of justified as a motivation for a character to do what he does.
I love the amount of time they spent to just in total silence, by the way, that they adjust his cape, and it seems like what is it? I think he starts with his right shoulder, because we see him from the back, so it's first his right, and I think the actor playing his assistant, he spends just. It seems like he's struggling with the cape, sort of like a behind the scenes goof, but it's funny that they kept it in, because it sort of fits with a sort of a subordinate being sort of struggling, being a bit nervous because he's working with his butt, because the second shoulder that one goes a lot faster.
It does.
So, but I love I love the fact that they spend quite a lot of, it's almost like a full minute that it's just fiddling with the cape. And I think a movie nowadays, they would never do that. It would be like, oh, here's Shredder, here he is, and he would start wisecracking, but here he's treated with a sort of reverence and respect and total seriousness as well. It's at no, I'm thinking there's not a single joke or pun or crack that he's making. Shredder is 100% totally serious as a villain, and that would be, I think, a lot of screenwriters would do that differently nowadays. They would have to be sort of a pop culture reference or something to make him more funny. But I love the fact that he's totally 100% sincere.
I agree with that, because I mean, people sort of took what Jack Nicholson did in Batman '89 and ran with it, so that all these comic book villains really became totally
sort of
ridiculous.
a joke.
Just a joke. Very few of them were genuinely a threat, to the hero. But this definitely has got the guts to do something different and make it Shredder a genuine, terrifying presence, like you say. And I agree that now it'd be a bit of a pantomime villain, and we certainly don't get that. We certainly don't get that.
Yeah, and then they go a little over the top with the sequel when he becomes Super Shredder just for stupid reasons. It's just he's just suddenly massive because the film says so, and you're like, well, that's not really, he's not as interesting in the second one. No, I don't mind. He's very good here, but yeah.
I love how he's totally it's he dies, or he at least let's say, I don't know if he really dies in the movie. We assume that he dies, but I love that it's totally his own doing.
Yes.
he could have avoided his death. It's the turtles have nothing to do with it. It's very funny, but of course, characterization wise, he's a lot better in the first movie, of course.
Yeah, he is. He's wonderful. I mean, it's a great performance, and I think others who follow in that kind of vein of a villain performance, I think they end up being more iconic. I mean, there's a reason, like Darth Vader, no one jokes. He doesn't joke around, and he's iconic and truly menacing throughout everything. I think of Ian McKellen's Magneto, he's another one that kind of comes to mind, is like, playing everything as straight as possible, and you just buy into it, and I buy into it with this one. So Ninja Turtles 1990 was the 9th highest grossing film in the world that year. It's
very nice.
Had a budget of $13.5 million and made a whopping $200+ million. So huge success. I think rightfully so. Everyone, but then of course, it had its detractors. Not everyone loved it. Roger Ebert gave it 2.5 out of 4 stars, which I thought was a little bit ridiculous. The New York Times didn't like the cinema, criticized the cinematography. Like, it's poorly photographed. I'm sorry. Excuse me.
Sometimes it makes you wonder whether these critics have seen the same film.
Yeah. That's just a moody person, I think. I think both Roger Ebert and Janet Maslin from the New York Times were just having bad days that day.
Yeah, clearly.
But yeah, huge success. People loved it. They churned out the second film very, very quickly. Third one,
I think Roger Ebert, he seemed to be under the impression that the movie was based on the video game. So I think he completely missed the mark. He was I love Roger Ebert. I mean, he's one of the greatest. But sometimes he was just totally off the mark.
Yes. Yeah. He didn't get the brief.
I remember. He thought Home Alone 3 was the best of the 3. Whoa. In what world is that the best of the Home Alone movies?
He dies. Huh? Weapons. Now. Fools. The 3 of you might have overpowered me with the loss of but one. Now your fate will be his.
Splinter!
But yeah, so no, Ninja Turtles 1990. This for me is just one of the I don't say this hyperbolically, but I think it is quite literally one of the best comic book adaptations ever made. I think it is so true to the source, and then weaves in what was happening pop culturally with the Turtle cartoon, and blends this so perfectly. This fun but dark and gritty combination of comic book spoof, satire, parody, but done in a very serious and earnest and reverent way that just I think that's what's allowed it to remain so iconic.
For all the sort of dogging we've done on the sequels, none of which have stayed in my mind particularly. I think you can say, well, at least we've got this one, and if you're a Ninja Turtles fan, this is a pretty decent film to have, representing your devotion and your love of that particular story up on the screen. I mean, you'd be very proud of it.
I think if you're looking for classic Turtles, this is perfect.
I think it's definitely the best of the Turtle movies by a big margin. And it's probably the only one that'll still be discussed and talked about in, let's say, in 50 years. But no, they really did it. I don't know if it's my favorite comic book movie or movie based on a comic book. I have no idea, because I'm also very fond of The Dark Knight, for example, but it's of course a totally different movie. But it's a very good one. Let's keep it at that. And of course the animatronic work. The animatronic work is outstanding. I don't think any movie did it better than that. Decades of Jim Henson perfecting his craft. Put on motion picture with the best of results. So it's really it's a sad swan song for Jim Henson. So in that he passed away and he didn't really like the violence, but the work he did, he can be very proud of that.
I think it's the best adaptation of the source material that we've got to date. I think that's the way I'd sum it up.
There's nothing that I would change, and that's what I mean by sort of the best adaptation. Because I love the X-Men movies, but there's shit tons that I would change about those. I like the first two Sam Raimi films, but I would change everything about the third one. So it's in I love elements of the first two Superman films, but there's a lot I would change about those. It's one of those things like it's like Lord of the Rings, which again, people are going to be like screaming at me, I'm sure, when they listen to this, but there's nothing I would change about Lord of the Rings. That is a perfect adaptation of that source material. I think they did a great, incredible job there. And I think this, for what it is adapting and how it is adapting, is of the same quality and craftsmanship as something like that. It is a very good, very true adaptation, and that's kind of what I mean by the best comic book adaptation. Like, it is so true to the source that it just feels like page to screen.
Absolutely. I was just going to say
I love that. I love that about this film.
Yeah. Now, what is all this talk about spending the night down here?
You're a claustrophobic.
You want a fist in the mouth? I've never even looked at another guy before.
What he means is that you're afraid of enclosed areas.
Afraid? What, me? Wait, is that what you think? Hey, I don't have to take this stuff about being afraid. I want to sleep in the truck.
Well, Julian, thanks so much for coming and hanging out with us and investigating Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 1990. Where can people find you on the internet?
I think you asked that last time as well.
Probably.
I always think it's a little awkward to plug yourself. So my YouTube channel is it's just my name, so it's Julian de Bakker. I think youtube.com/ but you can find me if you just type in my name in YouTube. And other than that, it's just Twitter and Instagram. It's always my name, so I'm never hiding behind anagrams or pseudonyms or whatever it is. So by all means, if you like nerdy if you like nerdy Belgians talking about pop culture, give me a like and give me a subscribe.
Yes, do. I'll there will be a link to your YouTube channel in the description of this episode.
That's great.
Well, I think that is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 1990 well and truly done. I think we can file this case away, but don't worry. Your Cinematic Sleuths will be back next week with a new investigation. So, in the meantime, take care walking down those mean cinematic streets.